Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just waiting for the video stream to go live before we start. That's it, we're live now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the reconvened meeting of the Planning Committee. The meeting is a continuation of the Planning Committee meeting adjourned on the 24th of June 2026, and will only consider those items not determined before the adjournment. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber, and these members will be voting on the proposals this evening. Other members of the council are also in attendance and/or participating via MS Teams and can take part in any discussions, ask questions, but cannot vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out guidance on how meetings will be conducted, including the ground rules. Your attention is also drawn to the rules for public speaking in respect of planning applications and committee procedure rules in the Council's constitution, which apply to this planning committee meeting. I note that there's been a lot of public interest in some of the items on the agenda tonight. So for me to be able to effectively manage the meeting, I'd appreciate it if members of the public and councillors speaking tonight only deal with the planning applications before us tonight and do not stray onto other matters. Please be advised that this is a meeting held in public and it is not a public meeting or rally. Members of the public are very, very welcome to join us to observe the formal meeting, which should not be disruptive. I do not wish to hear any applause or other noises of support or derision for any speakers, be they public or committee members. When invited to speak, speakers must come to the microphone in front of the committee and not speak from the public area. That is the chair down there for public speakers. Before we start the formal business, we'll confirm attendance of voting members by doing a roll call. Please, Victoria.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
Present.
Councillor Clokey.
Present.
Councillor Dalton.
Present.
Councillor Davis.
Present.
Councillor Hickmott.
Present.
Councillor Hood. Councillor Hudson.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Pilgrim.
Present.
Councillor Tatton.
Present.
Councillor Thornywell. Councillor Tunstall.
Present.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Palmer, who's been substituted by Councillor Taylor.
Present.
Thank you.
Introduce the officers. Susan, please.
Susan Field, Principal Planning Officer.
Josh, please.
Josh Kwok, Divan Management Team Leader.
Ian, please.
Ian Williams, Development Manager.
And Charlotte, please. Angelina, please.
Angelica Rocad, I'm external counsel, just filling in today from 6 Pump Court Chambers.
Many thanks, and sorry to get your name wrong.
It's absolutely fine.
And Victoria, please.
Victoria Freeman, Democratic Services Officer.
And finally, Kristen, please.
Crispin Kennard, Regulatory Services Manager.
Members of the public, the applicant and all agents wishing to address the planning committee meeting are present in the chamber and will be invited to speak at the appropriate time. The speaking time limit of 3 minutes for each application continues to be applied, and speakers are unable to participate in any subsequent discussion of the application. And that 3 minutes is exact. The moment we reach 3 minutes, you cut off mid-sentence, please. Right, we go to apologies. I've got apologies for Councillor Palmer with a substitute by Councillor Taylor. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No. in which case we're down to the substantive motions. I'm going to make a short statement here. It's very much for the benefit of the members of the public who are present tonight. It's just a few words on for people who are not familiar with planning law. We, Tunbridge and Malling, are totally ruled by planning law set by the Westminster government and not by us. First of all, they describe TNBC as a planning authority, and I believe that to be a misnomer, because authority is a word which gives you, the public, the idea that we have absolute control over everything and nobody else does. We are not all powerful. We are far better described as planning administrators, administrating the law that Westminster sets for us. Now, as a planning authority, we do actually have a little bit of wiggle room in there called the local plan. And the local plan is a policy document which carries great weight and is constructed in conjunction with the Westminster policies that are set out in law, and so ours has to conform to that. Our current local plan is the 2007 extant plan, and that is badly out of date. We put forward a plan in 2019, and in 2022 that was rejected by the planning inspectors on a minor technicality, which was absolutely infuriating. We have a new plan now, which is coming to near fruition, and we're very much looking forward to that coming in between now and 2028. This committee that you see here tonight deals with most of the contentious applications, and it's very much desirable that those are done in public, and so that it can be seen to be done. And every member of the committee tonight are completely lay councillors. They have no planning qualifications whatsoever. They are rather like the jury in a Crown Court case, and we rely on our officers, our planning officers and our legal advisors to present the case in each and every for every item. They're the people who really guide us on things. It's our job to read those and to form an opinion. And then when we have concerns, uncertainties, then it's our job to question the officers, probe that and make sure that, that we are happy with what the officers are recommending, or deal with the officers to find alternatives. In each case, the application must be decided on one thing only: planning law. And for example, if we take something which is two things which are not planning law, just as examples, if someone's property is going to be damaged by a planning application next door, the value of the value of the property in commercial terms, that is not a planning reason. If someone's going to put a big row of houses in front of your beautiful view of the sea, that is not a planning reason. We can only decide on planning reasons, of which there are many. There's parking, there's roads, there's access to services, there's Mark, please, you're interrupting my hearing. Yes, please, just be quiet. There are planning issues. Those are planning issues, as indeed the provision of water. There are many others, and it's for with those examples. Now, in planning law, all the time we've got to consider competing things, and it's a bit like an old beam balance for weighing things that you perhaps remember. And the first thing that goes on in an application is the housing. So that goes on, and your scales go right up. Housing is set by central government, 1.5 million set by the present government. And our part of that is 20,000 homes before the year 2042. Against that, there are all sorts of problems and reasons that we need to look at. So we take things such as the parking, and that alters the balance slightly. We look at the highways, that alters things, the GP surgeries and the water. And we come down to a balance which is very difficult. But if it swings in this way, where there's too much against the application, we can refuse it. But we have to be able to say in planning terms what we're refusing on. Then that would be relatively easy. But we have a major problem in that we have an out-of-date local plan, the 2007 extant plan, and we do not have a 5-year supply of building land. As a result of that, we have to conform to a document called the National Planning Policy Framework. And in that, we have the dreaded paragraph 11D brackets on 2, which says if you haven't got a 5-year supply of land, you have a thing called the tilted balance. So we have a situation in which the housing is in a bad case. We've got all these cases here. Many of them go out of the window, and we come back to this situation with the tilted balance. That is dictated not by our wish, but by Westminster's. I hope that short introduction to the problem we have, I did ask at the beginning, Stacey, that we did not have interruptions. Please, I don't want
Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, Councillor Pilgrim hasn't said a word throughout.
I'm sorry.
I spoke to him earlier, and it could be must have been barely audible. No disruption hasn't come from this part of the chamber.
Thank you. I apologise. I'm not going to take any questions now. We've got a very, very busy night, and I need to get on with it. We've got to get on with things. Right then, let us now please move to item number 6, and we'll start with an introduction by Susan. I'm sorry, Josh, having a bad night tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. The application tonight is for the erection of a part 2-story, part 3-story building to provide C3 retirement home, comprising 50 residential units with associated communal facilities, parking, landscaping, access, and associated work on land to the south of St Andrew's Close in Alresford. The application site boundary is shown in red in the location plan to the left. It is within the urban area of Alresford and forms part of the historic ground of Preston Hall, which is Grade 2 listed. It also forms part of a wider site allocation under policy H3 of the Development Land Allocation DPD. The extent of the housing allocation is shown to the right. And where the cursor is the application site. These are some images of the proposed retirement home. At the top is the front elevation facing St Andrew's Close. At the bottom is the eastern side elevation. The rear elevation at the top faces toward London Road. The western side elevation is shown at the bottom of the slides. This is the landscape proposal. The building roughly follows an L-shaped formation with car parking provision at the front and landscaping buffer to the side and the rear. There is a total of 38 parking spaces at the front of the building. The images to the left, it shows the retirement village when viewed from the tree-lined avenue leading toward Preston Hall. The one to the right shows how it would appear when you look from the other end of St Andrew's Close. These photos are taken from St Andrew's Close, with the left-hand one showing the existing houses on St Andrew's Close, whereas the right-hand one it shows the current condition of the development sites. And these are some more images of the existing situation on site. So photos to the left is taken from within the site overlooking the avenue. The one to the right shows the junction on London Road. These photos are taken from the elevated car park on the opposite side of London Road, and it overlooked the application site. So where the cursor is, you'll see the roof of the existing houses on St Andrews Close. This is the aerial view of St Andrews Close and the wider housing allocation site. That's Preston Hall, and where the red dot is, that's St Andrews Close existing development. In terms of the main issues for consideration, the principle of developing the site for housing is acceptable as it's allocated for housing under policy H3 of the Development Land Allocation DPD. The site was also granted permission for 11 townhouses. The site is within an urban area of Elsford, where local services and shops are already available. The site is therefore considered in a sustainable location for housing development. The building will be in large scale, 3-story high, but it would not appear out of keeping with the surroundings where 3-story buildings already exist, and the site did have permission for 3-story townhouses. The building will be set back from London Road by approximately 65 meters. This would in turn reduce its visual prominence within the street scene. The existing tree belt along London Road would offer some visual relief further. The choice of external materials will be appropriate in this location, and the proposed landscaping would soften the development impacts while enhancing biodiversity of the site and beyond. As such, the impact on visual amenity, character and appearance is considered to be acceptable in this instance. There will be no harm to residential amenity for the reason already set out in the committee reports. Turning to highway safety and parking, the site is in a sustainable location where walking, cycling and public transport are all realistic alternative modes of transport to private motor vehicles. KCC Highways advise that they are satisfied with the proposed parking access arrangement and do not raise any concerns or objections subject to the conditions recommended in their consultation response. Hence, the impacts on highway safety and parking are acceptable in terms of the relevant policies. With regard to planning obligation, the proposal would offer a financial contribution of £370,000 for items listed in the hazard terms. The proposal would also provide 10% statutory requirements for biodiversity net gains and would deliver further enhancement through the creation of additional habitat features. The lead local flood authority raised no objection to the proposal on flood risk or drainage grounds. Evidence has been provided by the applicant to demonstrate a commitment by South East Water to provide the site with the necessary water infrastructure. Subject to the imposition of a granting condition, there will be no issues in terms of potable water supply. Overall, the proposal represents a sustainable development that contributes positively to the supply of new homes on land already allocated for housing under the existing local plan. The proposal would not give rise to any significant adverse impacts, and any residual impacts would effectively be mitigated through the recommended planning conditions. Therefore, this application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Josh. Can we take the first public speaker, please? Simon Broomfield. Your time starts from the time you start speaking, and you do need to press the red button on the right.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to address the committee this evening. My name is Simon Broomfield. I'm a Development Director at McCarthy & Stone. This proposal is for 50 age-restricted retirement living apartments set among communal facilities to provide comfort and security for people to live healthy and happy lives in their own homes. Such accommodation is needed nationally and locally. National planning policy guidance states that it is critical that local authorities deliver housing for older persons, and it is the only type of housing described in such urgent terms. Locally, the Council's latest strategic housing market assessment finds that the borough has an older age structure seen regionally and nationally, and growing further by 10,000 people by 2042, resulting in a need for around 950 additional retirement homes, clearly demonstrating a need. The site is well located with easy links to local facilities and local transport. The development itself is of a high standard of design, which responds to and complements the appearance of the area with no detrimental impacts upon neighbouring amenity. The building has been sited so that it will allow as many mature trees as possible to be retained and provide a generous green setting. The height of the building at 3 stories is in line with other buildings in the surrounding context, with no impact upon the nearby historical assets at Preston Hall. The development demonstrates an acceptable level of parking, which is in excess of the local highway authorities' adopted standards by 12. South East Water have confirmed that they can supply water to the development, and SUDS will ensure that the system can be drained. The proposed scheme will deliver a range of benefits, helping to support growth in the local economy and communities. Retirement housing generates greater local spend than other developments, with 50 units generating approximately £611,000 of spending per year. Each person living in such a development enjoys a reduced risk of slips, trips and falls and will recover sooner from illness and injury. This provides savings of around £3,500 per person per year to health and social care services. Furthermore, the formation of a new community combats issues of loneliness and isolation, which many people in older age find debilitating. Development will also see the release of under-occupied family houses. In light of the above considerations, I respectfully request that members follow the recommendations of officers for this well-designed scheme, which provides significant housing, social and economic benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to the local members. Who wants to start? Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the planning committee, but I'm a local councillor of Failsford South and Ditton. I would like the officers to reject this application. I've lived on the village for 30 years. As you can see from the main road, going down towards Preston Hall, it's not a road, it's a drive. And when you go up to Preston Hall, you've got to turn right, right again, and then right, and then you come to the houses on your right-hand side. That road is a cul-de-sac. That is the only green space left for children to play in. They play cricket, football. The locals have picnics there, and I think it should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, do you want to speak now or later?
Thank you, Chair. For everybody's information, Councillors Steve Hammond, Colin Williams and myself originally called this application in back in May 2024, partly because we felt the size of the proposed development meant it merited consideration by the former Area 3 Planning Committee, and partly because of the local residents' objections, together with the concerns raised by the former MP for Chatham and Aylesford, Dame Tracy Crouch. As we have heard, is also the case a previous application on this site was considered and approved at Area Planning Committee back in 2013. While the three of us support the wider aim set out in 612 that more housing provision should be made for older residents, potentially enabling more former family homes to be released onto the market, it should also be noted adequate provision has been made in the vicinity, including a significant application recently approved near Aylesford Village. In addition, while we are as ever mindful of the tilted planning balance that must be applied, there are other considerations members should be aware of. Back in 2024, Dame Tracy referred to the inappropriate scale of the development on such a tiny pocket of land, and that such a large residential home does not fit the area. A lack of consideration of the development's impact on local infrastructure and also its overstrained local healthcare services, and inadequate provision for site access and visitor parking. On viewing the planning portal, by my calculations, 29 local residents have submitted objections, and as referred to in the report under 6.57, They also commissioned Stantec UL Limited, an engineering, environmental and architectural consultancy firm, to examine the suitability of St Andrews Close as a potential access route to this retirement development. Turning first to the question of site access, I of course note the inevitable no objection from the local highway authority. The Stantec report suggests that the typical width of a minor access road is 4.8 metres. On a minor access way, the typical width is 4.1 metres. This matters, as if it is a minor access way, then development according to the Kent Design Guide should be restricted to 25 rather than the proposed 50 units. The actual width of St Andrews Close is between 4.1 and 4.3 wide, very close to the specifications of a minor access way. And to make matters worse, there are pinch points outside number 3 St Andrews Close, where the road narrows to just 3.2 metres. The report refers to the professional judgment of the local planning authority being applied in these situations, but you only have to visit the site to realise the access road is thoroughly inadequate at present. It's also highly limited as a movement corridor for larger vehicles. Other aspects of the road layout are also problematic. The turnings from Thomas Road into Milner Road, from Milner Road into St Andrews Close, are not laid out in a way to support the size and volume of construction vehicles, or indeed any larger vehicle at all. Turning to the question of parking, it seems that this development is a community for the active elderly. If that is the case, then 38 car parking spaces would seem inadequate, as according to the 2025 KCC adopted parking standards Appendix 1, one parking space should be allocated per 1 or 2 bedroom flat, as per the residential dwelling house car parking standards use class C3. Does this not mean there should be a minimum parking provision of 50 spaces? Thus, I suggest some additional visitors parking places. Bear in mind, 77% of over 60s now own a car. The question of visitor parking is also not inconsequential. As one resident pointed out, the road leading up to Preston Hall from the junction on London Road at the east of the proposed dwellings is already awkward to negotiate due to parked cars. This large residential home will exacerbate the parking issues because this road will also undoubtedly be used as an overflow parking by the occupiers of the dwellings and visitors when the allocated parking has been taken up. Alternatively, any overflow parking might be on St Andrews Close itself, which we have seen is not wide enough, or on the adjacent roads which are already overly congested. Away from access and parking, my colleague Steve Hammond has referred to the loss of a significant part of a valuable green space. Certainly when we carried out an informal visit recently, you could appreciate how well used it was by the local community for recreation, dog walking and picnicking. Although it is not formally a designated local green space, there will be a significant loss in public amenity, which I understand is a material planning consideration. There are no spaces of anything like a similar size in the vicinity, and it can't be argued the space is surplus to public requirements. One St Andrews Close resident has also observed that this space has even been used by the emergency air ambulance several times during his ownership of the property. We should also consider the heritage aspect, given Preston Hall is a Grade 2 listed building. While at 6.34, it is stated the proposal is located at the furthest point of the avenue and does unfortunately enter into the space of the avenue. However, this has no old trees and the avenue is of very low significance. The impact of the setting of Preston Hall by encroachment into this part of the avenue will be very low and will not be considerably harmful. Correspondingly, there will be no harmful impact on Preston Hall or its associated listed structures. As such, applying the heritage conservation policies contained in the PPF does provide a strong reason for refusing this development proposal. I'm surprised at this observation because objectively much of the pleasing aspect of the drive on the London Road will be lost as a result of the impact of this overly large development. I'm surprised the heritage officer states the avenue is of very low significance. arguably is one of the defining features of the whole Preston Hall site, with mature cedars and other trees providing its distinctive appeal. Finally, some of the ever-present local infrastructure concerns, such as added strain on local healthcare services, may not be material planning considerations. Portable water supply, though, is, and then certainly, as recommended in 6.68, we should impose a Grampian-style condition requiring the submission of a strategy detailing the proposed delivery of portable water for the building, together with an implementation timetable. This I see is set out in condition 24. So overall, because of the parking situation, the road access, and the loss of green space amenity, I'm minded to not support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, there's a lot of points to be dealt with there. Are you going to take them?
Yes, so I will address those issues one by one, starting with the point about minor access way and minor access road. That has been discussed in the planning committee report, and as explained in the committee report, KCC has taken the view that the road access as it currently stands is considered sufficient to accommodate the projected traffic movement associated with the development proposal. The applicant has evidenced the requirements of the proposal, including the potential traffic generation from it. As far as I'm aware, the total number of trips generated by this development per day would be around 86 during non-peak hours and 5 during the peak and morning peak and evening peak hours. So having considered all those vehicular movement associated with the developments, KCC confirmed that they are satisfied that this can be accommodated through the existing road layout. With regard to whether St Andrew's Close should constitute minor access road or minor access way, again, that is a professional judgment by the highway authority, not the local planning authority. So we have taken into account the advice being given to us by professional highway officer, and it is their opinions that the access road is adequate for the quantum of development being proposed, and this is also supported by the national manual for streets, which mandates the minimum width for road to be 4.2, which I can share with members. So as you can see in the screen, that's manual for street, which is a national guidance in relation to highways specification. With regard to minimum width for vehicles to move in opposing direction, as you can see, the bare minimum is 4.1. St Andrew's Close at the narrowest point is 4.2. So it does meet the national requirement in terms of vehicles passing in opposing directions, despite it might be slightly tight. That's the national requirement. Appreciate the road would not allow HGV or larger vehicles to pass in opposing directions, but the chance of them traveling in opposing direction is fairly low, and it can be controlled by construction management plan, which has been included as a condition. So with that CMP condition, it's possible to restrict those construction vehicle movements during the peak hours. So that could then minimize the disruption cost during the construction stage. That's with regard to the site access. Turning to parking standard. So in relation to parking standard, this has been addressed by KCC in the consultation response. They take this proposal as not plainly a C3 development. It's an 8 restricted C3 developments, and that's also subject to a planning condition to that effect. which means the parking requirement would not be the same as a normal C3 development. It is their opinion that the correct standard should be 1 space per half unit, which equates to 26 parking spaces in accordance with their parking standard. So the current proposal incorporate 38 parking spaces. So that's a noticeable surplus compared to the minimal requirement under the Kent's parking standard. And that has been endorsed by Kent's County Council as the local highway authority. So in terms of parking, appreciate the concerns being raised that it is below the standard for C3 unrestricted dwellings. But given the nature of this developments being age restricted, it's considered the level of provision is acceptable in that respect. In terms of heritage impacts, I would draw members' attention to the existing development that has already been allowed. There is a block of apartments directly opposite to Preston Hall, 3-story high. The height is comparable to the one before you. So in terms of impacts on heritage, especially the setting of Preston Hall, existing development already has far greater an impact than the proposal before you. And the conservation officer have reviewed the context, the emerging context following the sites being allocated for housing, and has advised that the impact on heritage would not be significant. Now, that brings us to the argument about less than substantial harm and substantial harm. And because the harm arising from this development will be less than substantial, that need to be weighed against the public benefits. Now, members might afford different ways to the provision of housing, but 50 units is quite a significant number in relation to the annual requirement under the housing target. So it's for members to decide how much ways you afford to that provision of 50 units, but office advises this is not insignificant in relation to the annual target. So in terms of heritage harm, it is officers' opinions that the impacts arising from this development on heritage would not significantly outweigh the public benefits, including, amongst other things, the provision of 50 units. And because of that, in accordance with the NPPF, it is our opinion that it wouldn't really amount to a strong reason for refusal as being referred to. So the next question is then whether the impacts arising from this development will be significantly and demonstrably outweighed by other consideration. Now, it's a matter for members to consider, but in relation to heritage, we don't consider the harm would be so significant that will provide a strong reason for refusal, having regard to the consultative advice on this particular matter. Now, finally, with regard to infrastructure, you will be aware that NHS has been consulted on this application, and NHS has requested a financial contribution toward the provision of or enhancement of existing GP provision. Now, with that amount of contributions being secured by way of Section 106 agreement, it is our opinion that this would compensate or mitigate the impact arising from this development of 50 units for retirement homes. So in terms of infrastructure, we do believe there will be additional resource available in order to provide for this development. So appreciate at the moment there might be constraint in terms of provision in this particular area, but there will be financial contribution secured to enhance the current provision. So hopefully by the time the development completes, there will be provision in place to support it in terms of social care and health. Thank you, Chair.
One of the things that they raised Josh, was the loss of green space. Apparently in this British Legion Village area, there's no recreation ground or anything like that. What has been done to ameliorate that?
So with regard to open space, yeah, thanks for picking that up. With regard to open space, the site has never been allocated for open space. It's always been allocated for housing. So while it might be informally used as leisure area, the allocated purposes of the site is for housing, and it's up to the landowner to decide whether they allow third party to use their land in the interim before the development take place, and that seems to be the case. So while it might well be used for leisure facilities, leisure activities at the moment, it doesn't amount to a loss of open space when it's not really allocated for open space in first place. So in that respect, we don't believe there will be a loss. And I'll also draw members' attention to the heads of terms, which also include provision of open space offsite contribution as a result of this development. So the demand arising from the current proposal would be mitigated or would be addressed through the offsite financial contribution toward open space provision, which our leisure services requested. Thank you, Chair.
Do the local members want to come back?
Not at this moment. I'll wait to see what others have to say. Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a point of clarification from Josh. There's significantly lower amount of parking than the statutory one per dwelling here. And in Josh's talk, he said it was the opinion of the KCC officer. Now, does a personal opinion by an officer carry less weight than a statutory consultee response? Can we ignore that opinion? Thank you.
Here's one for you, Aaron.
So I've been having a look through the parking guidance, and obviously it's this C3 development, which is for retirement living. I believe obviously the opinion of the highways officer, that's what we work on because they're the experts in that particular area. And unless Josh can point to me where it says 1.5 units per dwelling, I was from the guidance I've seen, it's one dwelling. So you could legitimately suggest that there is an under provision of car parking on this particular site if you so desired. But I would ask Josh to show me where it said 1.5.
Please, Josh.
So this one is the transport statement from the applicant, and that include the pre-application engagement that they have and the pre-application response they have got from KCC. And then, as you can see here, it talks about the standard in regard to a development of this nature. It requires one space per residence warden, and one space per 2 units, and hence why they have come up with the figures of 26, I believe. So that's how they come up with that figures. I can find the pre-application response from KCC for you if that's useful.
No, that's okay. So in answer to your question, there is within the guidance C3 dwelling houses as sheltered housing, which is the standard that Josh has pointed to there, and that has one space per residential warden and I believe one space per 2 units as well. So it's how you depends how you look at this, because this is retirement living. I don't know whether or not, and maybe maybe Josh can point me to whether or not there are wardens on site in this particular development, Josh. If there aren't,
it's not specified in the planning statement as to whether warden will be presented on site. or residents warden will be
So
represented.
it's not your standard C3, which is open to everyone. I think the highways officer's taken a view that it's more similar to a sheltered housing scheme where a lower car parking provision would be acceptable. However, that's an opinion, and one which the committee may well not share.
Roger, please. Roger Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got to come back on parking. With respect to the officers, Dave and I have served this council for over 20 years, and our main problems, like we had a development in Peters Village, and even today we get complaints from residents about the parking situation. Dave and I pushed many years to have garages taken out of the parking standards because IGN 3, which quotes this 1.5, and it's back to 2002, completely out of date. And the new adopted plan, whichever way you look at it, I don't think this is generally going to be for retired people. It's going to be for an age limit person. And some of those people are still working. So to reduce the standard parking for a class 3 clearly states that's a 2005 vehicle parking standard, 1 and 2 bedroom flats, 1 space per unit. So that is 50 units minimum. And I will not support this application if that is reduced. Now, also, you showed a photograph of vehicles on that road. If you can go, sorry, not photographs, a graph. Can you go back to that, please?
Yes, bear with me.
Yeah, that's the one. Well, with respect there, I went to have a look at the site, and I've got a standard saloon car, and one of my colleagues actually came up there and parked opposite me, and we had a little chat, and he had to squeeze past me in that road, and it's 4.1 meters wide and 3 meters wide at the build out. Now, also, they've got on that, whichever drawing you like to, draft you like to look at, there are 7 houses. If cars, vehicles are parked anywhere on St Andrews Road, those people would not be able to drive out of their houses because their drives are literally 90 degrees to the road. If you were insisting on that, without any doubt, you need double yellow lines along the whole of that road so that people do not park there. Now, also in the condition, it's got 5.4 TNBC Waste Service standing advice applies. Can you tell me what that standing advice is? Because I'm led to believe that our waste service collection vehicles have major problems in that area, even to the fact that they have to reverse up to pick the household waste up. And it's been on more than one occasion, our vehicles haven't been able to get up there. So they've left those houses, gone away, and then come back. And on one occasion that I'm been made aware of, they visited for collecting bins 3 times in the course of a day because of vehicles parked there. Now, I've been in construction industry all my working life. If you get waste vehicles reversing up that road to this development because they can't drive up, you need an operative, like in the construction industry, it's a banksman. We had a situation on East Peckham Bypass where one of our operatives was killed with a vehicle ploughing into the back of the collection cart. It was a small one. And for many months, some of our officers were under suspicion of possibility of manslaughter charges because they didn't carry out a due diligence on safety for their operatives. And likewise, I've been up that road, I've seen it. You cannot and should not reverse up that road. So there should be a complete turning circle for our operatives in the waste collection, and also double yellow lines. And I'm afraid it's all well and good saying highways this and highways that. Well, I'm talking about the real world here, actually on the ground. And likewise, I will not support this application purely on the highway grounds, but there are other issues, but I won't go into them at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So, Councillor Rhodes is no longer a member of the Planning Committee. Normally, he always spoke about access for refuse vehicles. So, thank you very much to Councillor Dalton for tackling that. I fail to see how refuse vehicles are going to be able to get in and out of here either without a turning circle. And I've got grave concerns about the inadequate provision of parking here, because I can see the little boxes that I assume are garages on the illustration. However, are we expecting there to be car parking on the road as well? When I totted up the number of garages, even if they're double garages, I fail to see how it's possible that this is going to be adequate enough. We're going to end up with another situation where a planning committee gives permission for a development with under provision, and we end up with cars parked everywhere. Even less likely that the refuse vehicle is going to be able to get around, or an emergency vehicle. So on that grounds, this fails. I think we need clarification, Chairman, about whether or not this is a warden assisted development. When you look at the buildings here, the layout of it, and the artist's impression, it doesn't strike me that would be the case. We heard from the speaker earlier about the need for retirement accommodation. Well, I can tell him, and I will tell the committee, as I always do, that our greatest need in this borough is for affordable housing, and we do not have a single unit of affordable housing provided here. So this application is not compliant with CP 17, where we're supposed to have 40%. I acknowledge the fact that we've got £370,000 contribution to affordable housing elsewhere, but there's no justification in the paper as to why none has been secured here. Why we've got lots of units here, lots of different elements to this development. There's no reason at all, Chairman, why one or two of these blocks couldn't have been allocated for affordable housing. No reason at all. I think we've been let down by our heritage advice again with regard to the access to Preston Hall as well. But on the grounds that I've laid out, I shall not be voting for this.
Thank you. We've got whilst we've dealt with parking, the committee does have some serious concerns about parking. But for the first time, we've now got to the issue of affordable housing, where we've only got about a 370,000 contribution. And how many affordable houses does that buy somewhere else? And I think these are the sorts of things we as a committee do need to look at.
So just in respect to it, I've been told that there is sufficient space within the site for a refuse vehicle to turn. We have tracking diagrams, which I believe Highways have reviewed. In terms of the access road itself, so it is a private road. It would be down to the residents, obviously, to therefore sort of put any sort of parking control and what have you. And that would obviously be within the gift of the applicant to discuss that with the residents of that particular road. But I do understand the committee's concerns with regards to that. In terms of the affordable housing itself, it has been independently tested by our own consultants in terms of the viability of the site, and they agreed that there wasn't sufficient surplus within the viability of the viability report to actually provide affordable housing on site. However, through the negotiations, they believe that a contribution of 300,000 was acceptable, and that's what the officers have put forward. The fact that it doesn't provide it on site, that has been tested, and I think that would be a very difficult path for the committee to go down, unfortunately.
Michelle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I picked up from the papers that the refuse vehicle was going to have to run over the pavement in order to get access. So that doesn't seem at all ideal to me. I don't know why that's not designed out. Why do we think that's acceptable to have a refuse vehicle running over the pavement? And in relation to the affordable housing, I mean, it's quite interesting, I think, because we do expect developments of this size to have that mix. And obviously, McCarthy and Stone are a high-end developer, and I wonder whether they have any schemes anywhere that have an affordable element, or whether they always manage to wriggle out of providing that on site. It doesn't sit comfortably with me when we provide something off site when we really should be providing it on site. In relation to the green space, I think Josh is saying that none of that green space would be made available or still be available to existing residents. Could I just check, because there's a provision for some 46,000 or something for green space. So where would that be allocated? Would that be within the village? Would that be somewhere else in Aylesford, or would it be somewhere further afield? Thank you.
In terms of the contribution, I believe that would go into a central pot, which then our leisure services would then look towards providing open space where there are open space deficiencies within the borough. So they'd obviously do some study to see where there are deficiencies. But I would like to remind the committee that this is an allocated site for housing, and it does previously have planning permission for housing on the site. So in terms of refuse vehicles, there would still have been refuse vehicles to serve those houses that had planning permission previously. And also in terms of the fact that it is used, and I openly accept that it's probably used as amenity space for residents around there, but it's not a designated open space. And there would be no real justification in policy terms for us to go down that particular route of sort of investigation, because it's allocated for housing. It'd be a very difficult reason for refusal for the council to spend if the committee was minded to do that.
Thank you. Just to pick up on the affordable housing point, am I right in reading the papers? We've talked about £370,000. That's the total for all contributions. The affordable housing contributions, £277,000. I think the rest includes all those other points, if I'm reading it correctly. I wanted to ask, we seem to be settling on a fixed number rather than a late-term viability assessment. I mean, there probably is a correct number for settling for that, but it feels like there's more chance of that turning out beneficial on the upside for the developer than for us. So I think splitting bang bang down the middle between the two assessments feels a little bit low for the fixed number on that. I wonder if you could comment.
Yes, so I believe that our independent assessors did suggest a late stage review. Now the problem with that is obviously it's based upon future prices, etc., and the success of the development itself. So there's no guarantee that you would get anything back from that particular review. The other thing as well is that there are examples of appeals where the developer, because it's a retirement, it's not an completely open market development, it's a slightly higher risk. And there was a discrepancy between the profit margins, however, that I've seen, and in places where I've worked previously, similar developments, inspectors have accepted a higher profit margin. And so this was then the reason we didn't go for the late stage review, is because we don't have a policy position to actually insist upon it. And we've believed as officers that securing something is better than securing nothing in the future. And so it wouldn't be a reason to refuse the application because of the absence of the late stage review. And that was the sticking point, and why the negotiations were slightly more protracted, essentially, and why it's taken a while to get to committee. But based on my experience and my opinion, I think it's better to secure something than potentially nothing in the future.
Dennis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I found the briefing on the viability quite fascinating, really, because it wasn't clear to me exactly why there was no provision for affordable housing on site, but the discussion about what was an acceptable profit margin between 7.5% and 20% on paper was quite interesting. So I'll have the same question as Councillor Tatton, really, is that it's not clear why there was no affordable provision on site. But then the figure of 370,000, if I read it correctly, covers all potential planning obligations in order to avoid the need for a late stage review mechanism. So that 370 does encompass the other elements. And I think the figure down below, if I get it correct, is £307,478. So I think the difference is the other bits and pieces. And I assume if this plan went ahead, then that 307,000 would be channeled in some way to provide affordable housing on other sites, presumably via a housing association or something. But that's something that you can say afterwards, Ian. I didn't come here thinking heavily about the parking, but it does strike me as odd. I mean, in the write-up, it says that the minimum age of people living there should be 60. And anyone younger could be a spouse of someone who's living there. So that's fair enough. But it seems to me there's two alternatives. If they're 60 or close to it, they're likely to have a vehicle. And if they're older, then they're going to have a lot of care workers attending left, right and centre. So I don't think it's the right scenario to be saying this is akin to sheltered accommodation. I think that the provision is poor. And I thought we got away from that, because I do remember applications in Tunbridge where we allocated nothing to flats because they had a local residential parking scheme, which was oversubscribed anyway. But we found an excuse for that, and I wasn't very happy about that. And I thought through IGM3 and other schemes, we got a bit more sensible about it. So half a parking space per unit seems pathetic to me, but I'm not really quite sure I buy the scenario that Kent County Council has used to justify it. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve again.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to get back to years ago, Preston Hall used to be a TB hospital, and the hospital wards used to be down the one side. Before the houses were built, there used to be two-way in, one way out. And then soon as the housing came on, they stopped the second exit. So you come all around the one-way system. And it's unbearable, because I live at East Park Road, and you've just got to wait for traffic to come. the dust cart cannot get down. He has to reverse into the car park and reverse up our road, collect all the bins from the bottom and then come all the way back out. He's all right coming back the one way, but once he goes into St Andrew's Close, he's got to go down the bottom, reverse back up, end house, back out. It's impossible.
I have a concern that I understand that St Andrew's Close is a private road, and I'm therefore concerned about who currently is owns the management of that. Is that the people in St Andrew's Close? And if so, is this development buying in to the long-term maintenance of that road?
Unfortunately, unless Josh has the answer to that one, I don't have an answer to that particular question. I don't know who manages the road itself.
Can you help, Steve?
Thanks, Chair. Before the houses were built, it was called Crossfields. There used to be a lab on the one side. And then it was built, it was put in for the people that live there. So, because how else are they going to get out? There was no roads whatsoever there. It was all green space. Thank you, Chair.
Have we got any more speakers? Any more people with questions? David, please.
I mean, can the officers confirm one way or the other, does the dust cart have to drive over the pavement? And if it does, is that acceptable according to our rules?
I'll have to vote to Joshua on that one.
So highway officer in the consultation response this side will be a bit infringement to the pavement, but he didn't consider that minor infringement to result in unacceptable highway impacts. So that's the advice being given. So yes, there is an acknowledgement that there will be minor infringement to the pavement, but that wasn't treated as being a significant highway safety concern by the highway authority.
But Roger.
Yes, thank you very much. You've stated that it's a private road. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, as Dave alluded to, the maintenance of that road is now down to the residents that use that road. If we've got a council-owned vehicle riding over the curb, which may or may not happen, are you expecting the residents to pay for the damage to put right?
With regard to that point, I would draw members' attention to the access arrangement being largely unchanged. So the way that bins are empty is the same as existing, apart from the fact that they are going to extending the turning head further. So there is no actual change to the access arrangement for refuse vehicles. And if there has been issue with regard to bins collections for existing houses on St Andrew's Close, that's the existing situation. What the tracking diagram does demonstrate is the extended turning head would be sufficient for access of the refuse vehicles within the application size. I think, yeah, so that's just a point for clarification, because there is no change to St Andrew's Close beyond the application size.
Thank you, Chair. As we're coming to the end, I think, of the discussion, I'd like to propose refusal of this application. And would you like me to list reasons, or is that just a motion?
Can you just list out your reasons, please?
Yep, sure.
We'll take it down here and start formulating a recommendation.
Just simply inadequate parking, deficient road access, damage to heritage assets, loss of local green space, and I'm prepared to take on also the factor about affordable housing as well. Thank you.
Would add to that the inadequate plan for the maintenance of the long-term maintenance of the road.
Chair, can I come in there just before the
Please, Andrew.
Thank you. I'm sure officers will deal with the recommendation, but it's probably helpful now if I at least give some indicative guidance, if that's helpful. Just with regards to the last reason for refusal, which I think has been potentially drafted as number 5, with regards to the private road, I don't know factually whether we've established who is responsible for maintenance or not on that part. So I just wanted to clarify what the actual reason for refusal draft reads as, just so I can make sure I've correctly advised the committee legally.
Come back to you in a minute when we've done that, Angela.
Thank you.
So, so in terms of the reasons, I think I could quickly put a reason together for due to the inadequate parking provision and inadequate access to the site, it's considered that the proposal will result in overspill car parking to the detriment of the safe and efficient operation of the public highway, contrary to, and I haven't got the policies in front of me, but the requisite policies for highway safety and also the Kent County Council car parking guidance. However, I would have to advise the committee that any refusal in respect to green space or the heritage assets, I don't think would be sustainable, for the simple reason we don't have, in terms of the green space, it's non-allocated green space. It's allocated for housing. So you do not have a policy position on which to refuse on green space, unfortunately. And my legal advice would be that you've got to determine it in line with the development plan, and the development plan says this is allocated for housing. So I think that one would be a very difficult one, and one which I don't think we'd be able to substantiate. In terms of the heritage assets, we have our conservation officer who's given us advice and said that it's on, it doesn't significantly impact the grade 2 listed building. Again, it's being considered for housing beforehand as well, and I think again that's going to be a very difficult reason for refusal to substantiate. However, in terms of the car parking and the access, I think that's possibly something that is arguable and one which could be potentially defendable, essentially.
Roger.
Can I just say that you just said or stated that the green space was allocated for housing. Was that the whole of the green space?
So the site itself is allocated for housing. So at the moment it is open, undeveloped land. It formed part of the gardens of the grade 2 listed building. However, it's not, as it were, designated green space. So as you designate green belt, you can also designate green spaces. So usually it's urban green space or other green spaces as well. This doesn't have a planning designation. So it's in planning terms, it's undeveloped land, which I accept is green and there is space, but it's allocated for housing. So there's no policy position for us to refuse it. I would struggle to come up with the reason for refusal because it's not contrary to any particular policy, essentially.
Yeah, and if I can maybe come back on that, what I was asking is the whole of that area, other than what within the red line, been designated for housing? Is it a straightforward yes or no?
So yes, the entire site has been designated for housing, yes.
Thank you.
My query on the roads was who's responsible for the maintenance? For the long-term maintenance? Any part of?
Unless Josh has those details, I'm not entirely sure.
No, we don't have that information on hand because the red line boundary doesn't include a private road, and they don't necessarily have to include a private road because the actual development is not taking place on the private road. So no, we don't have any information about the ownership of the road.
Mark, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Looking at the Kent County Council parking standards, which were updated only last year, at paragraph 60, it says, at the application stage, an understanding of all the type and level of care being offered should be provided, and an individual assessment of parking should be completed, potentially through the use of tricks or through first principles approach, using specific examples of similar sites. This may lead to a requirement for the highest parking provision within this use class to be provided. Parking should be discussed with the local planning and highways authorities to ensure suitability. So I think fundamentally we've got an issue here where I'm not Mystic Meg, but it seems to me that members are going to vote against this proposal, and we're going to have to come back for a cost report. So I would request, Chairman, that this issue is fully explored, so we know exactly the level of care which is going to be provided at any of these areas in any of these units. And the issue of affordable housing, I would like clarification as to why no affordable housing is provided on site, even in one of those very small locations, one of those very small islands of units there.
Okay.
My suggestion is we could go back and ask the find out about the maintenance of the road. So my suggestion possibly would be to defer this application to allow officers to come back with those particular answers and allow committee, because like I say as well, I don't think the affordable housing reason for refusal would be, given that it's been independently tested by the council's own consultants, there would be a sustainable reason for refusal. And again, from my experience, defending viability at appeal is quite a difficult thing. The inspectors generally do side with the facts and figures that they have in front of them. But my suggestion would be if the committee so wishes to know a bit more detail about the maintenance, that we could defer the application and come back with that information for them.
Chairman, if you'd be so kind, my question was about the level of care. So with regard to parking, that we need to establish that.
Angelica, please.
Chair, thank you very much. Just to outline here some procedural matters, options really for this committee. One option obviously is to defer the application to gain the information which you feel you need to determine the application in full. That's one option. Another option is to consider what it is described as a potentially defendable reason for refusal, and that, as I understand it, relates to parking arrangements, and leave other reasons for refusals to the side if it's considered potentially undefendable. Or the third option is that if more than one reason is put forward, some of them which are potentially defendable, some of which your officer has advised you are not, then officer is correct. The matter will then end up being deferred for a cost report. So it's just a signpost here. Obviously, you can continue your debate as well. That's obviously a fourth option, but it's just a signpost, some options and avenues.
Just a quick point, Chairman, to back up what Councillor was saying. A few years ago, my mother was cared for at home. She had a pair of carers 4 times a day. This is just one old lady, right? This is going to be multiple times in this. This is what these facilities are for. I just think the provision is completely inadequate. So we do have to look at what is being intended here. And if someone says differently, then there has to be we have to identify how the rules and regulations bear that out. You know, because people will get old in these homes. That's what they're for. Thank you.
David?
I just caution against the issue of who maintains the road and who's responsible for it, because it strikes me that that's not a planning consideration. And if you came up with a conclusion that you weren't happy as to who would maintain the road, that's not a refusal ground. Sorry.
No, you wouldn't be able to refuse the application on that particular grounds. But as I've said, obviously the under-provision of car parking and inadequate access could be a defendable reason. But should the committee wish to find out that information, we could do. But as Councillor Huda said, he would like to know more information about the affordable housing and level of care as well. So I mean that's another option. But as Ms. Rocard has said, there are 4 options available for the committee at this moment.
Mike, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was involved in an application in Lewisham where there was a private road access to back land development, and that was dealt with by a gramping condition. So could we impose a gramping condition that also requires the developer to strike up some sort of deal about widening the road as a gramping condition rather than a reason for refusal?
That would be very difficult because we typically you can only condition things which are within the red line application site. However, there is provision if the landowner has land beyond that red line application site to condition it, and usually you would see on that site location plan there a blue line around the ownership of the applicant. Problem with the private road is that we don't know whose ownership it's in, and it's in the third party ownership, and therefore an application of a condition may be unenforceable. Well, will be unenforceable because we can't enforce it on the landowner, the applicant. So I would not recommend that, no.
Michelle?
Actually, Chairman, I think my questions have been answered for now, but it seems to me that the right thing to do would be to defer, but I think we've had a proposal. So are we in the position where I don't know what the local members think, whether they would like to withdraw that and we defer?
Rob, which direction would you propose?
Well, it's down to the committee. I'm loath to withdraw my application to refuse. I think there's grounds for parking alone, as our legal colleague said, are strong enough, and so I'm actually not going to withdraw my refusal notice.
Secretary, are you seconding it, Roger?
I will definitely second that proposal.
Just clarify, is it just on the one reason for refusal on parking and highways and access, sorry, or?
That's correct, yes.
That's a key statement in this. If that's the only reason we got for refusal, we must go with that. If there's anything else that concerns people, we need to get that on the resolution now. If there's anybody else wish to change that, David, please.
We include the parking so that can be considered and we get a proper answer.
Yes, so it's the inadequate. So inadequate parking provision and inadequate access would result in overspill car parking to the detriment of the safe and efficient operation of the public highway, and we would just need to insert the correct policies and the Kent guidance into that reason for refusal.
Is there anything else other than that highway issue, that broader highway issue, which fundamentally includes the parking? Mark?
Yeah. Obviously, I wanted to include affordable housing. I'm not sure. I can hear what Ian's saying about the grounds being undefendable in terms of the agreement that's been struck, but I've still no clearer about the hierarchy of why nothing has been why we were unable on a site such as this, where you've got so many small units, that it couldn't have been provided on site. So just some clarification on that would be really helpful.
So our independent assessors assessed it and said that it wasn't viable, and that the most surplus that you would get would be that 300,000. The issue that we have is we have to consider whether or not a registered provider would pick up the affordable housing on the site itself. And given that even if it was able to provide affordable housing, it'd be such a small amount that it's unlikely that a registered provider would be able to, what's the word, would pick it up. So in this particular instance, there wasn't absolute agreement in terms of smaller issues with the viability, but a view was taken by officers that we should secure the offer that we had in front of us, basically.
Thank you very much.
Right. So we are now going to. Please, Rob.
Sorry, just being informed. We need to give derogation to the officers to work out delegation. Sorry, to the officers to work out reasons for refusal. Precise wording. Sorry.
It's exactly as Ian just said. That's what we're going to vote on. Any more speakers? No, in which case we're going to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion, which is to refuse. All those in favour? No, thank you. The benefit of the people on YouTube, that motion was to refuse was carried. We're now moving on to the next item, but I think we'll just take a 5-minute break. We're back here at 9:05, please. You all take your seats, please. All take your seats. Right, we're going to start by giving the presentation on the project and then listening to the public speakers, and then we'll take it from there. Go, Susan.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the redevelopment of the site to provide 66 dwellings together with associated access, parking, open space and landscaping. The development would deliver a mix of new homes comprising 6 1-bed, 24 2-bed, 24 3-bed and 11 4-bedroom dwellings. This is the application site, and just to put it in context, Waterbury Crossroads is to the northwest, approximately 190 metres, and Teeston is to the east. The dotted line, I think you can just about see down here, is the borough boundary. This is the proposed site plan with the main access coming in from Tonbridge Road and a secondary pedestrian access to the east of the main access. There's a proposed pedestrian link into the playing fields to the south, and the built form is concentrated on the western half and tapers to the south. The eastern half proposed is for landscaping and a wildlife area and biodiversity net gain. The scheme would deliver 50% affordable and would be all 2-storey. This is just a selection of the design of the houses. As street scenes, the top one is fronting Tonbridge Road, but it doesn't include the existing and the proposed planting. And the one below is central to the site. And I've got a couple of photographs. This one's from Tonbridge Road, looking into the field. This one's taken from Fields Lane. This site photograph, or this is taken from the landscape visual appraisal of our emerging local plan, and it shows the site in the context of the wider area. This application was debated at Area 2 Committee on the 18th of February, where following the debate members resolved to refuse the application for 3 reasons, as shown on the slide. As it was considered that these reasons could not all be substantiated on appeal, it was resolved that the planning application be deferred for a cost report. In relation to reason for refusal 1, the cost report concluded that this reason, as it currently stands and in light of the current evidence, is not defendable. In relation to reason for refusal 2, specifically whether the reason should refer to Maidstone Borough Council landscape character assessment, the legal advice notes that the site does not fall within the Maidstone Borough Council boundary, nor has Maidstone Borough Council objected to the application upon consultation. Accordingly, it's not considered that this element within the reason for refusal is a defensible reason. Turning to reason for refusal 3, the cost report notes that no evidence has been put forward as to why the site would not comprise grey-belt, and moreover that the suggestion that the land is anything other than grey-belt is contrary to the council's own evidence base for the emerging local plan. Accordingly, the report concludes that this reason for refusal may place the council at the risk of costs application. Lastly, turning to policy SQ5 of the core strategy in relation to water, as set out in the committee update, the applicant has received a formal pre-development offer from South East Water, dated the 1st of July, which arguably confirms that there is adequate infrastructure currently to meet its demand in compliance with policy SQ5. However, as the offer from South East Water is only valid until the 1st of October, should members be minded to approve the application, officers recommend the imposition of the Grampian condition as set out in the committee papers. This will ensure that there is sufficient capacity at the time the development is commenced and its continued compliance with policy SQ5. Thank you, Chair.
I think the first speaker, Mr. Peter Coolan, please. Mr. Ken Hutchinson, if you'd like to. When you're ready, start speaking as time starts from then.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Waterbury Parish Council formally object to this application for the following reasons. Impact on the Medway Valley view. The land in question is the only unobstructed view Waterbury residents have of the Medway Valley from the A26. It is one of the best views of this protected conservation area. The site forms an important transition between Waterbury and open countryside. If this application proceeds, this view will never be returned. The central parts of the village will be lost, affecting people's well-being and mental health, something planning applications must consider. Such is the strength of feeling that this view is lost. In addition to the work undertaken by Parish Council to object, Waterbury residents have formed an action group raising their own funds to directly oppose the loss of this protected view of the Medway Valley. We are all in agreement that the proposal causes loss of openness and rural character. No amount of landscaping is going to mitigate. Indeed, the applicant's own landscape and visual appraisal identifies major adverse effects on public rights-of-way, roads and long-distance views across the valley, which is downplayed despite the area's recognised sensitivity. 2. The impact on highways, congestion and air quality. The applicant's traffic and air quality modelling is based on favourable assumptions, has incomplete data and limited transparency. Parish Council have conducted its own reports at considerable expense. It is quite clear from these that the applicant's data modelling around constant traffic flow and inadequate queue lengths is flawed. Impacts on the Waterbury AQMA and cumulative congestion have not been robustly assessed, contrary to national and local policy. With such uncertainty, policy requires a cautious approach, particularly where a development may worsen existing levels. Highways' response to the only AQMA left in this borough is quite frankly disappointing. Number 3, loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. The site comprises of grade 1 and 2 agricultural land. National policy does not support dismissing this loss as minor due to site size or its current grazing use. 4. Widely publicised issues surrounding South East Water's ability to manage their current infrastructure and supply the number of new homes required only adds to the reason why this application should be rejected. 5. TNBC's own emerging local plan had previously discounted this site as not suitable for development, and historically planning on this site had been refused. Our overall conclusion, the view across to a key Medway Valley view and conservation area is at the heart of Waterbury Village and must remain so to maintain our identity. The areas around Merryworth have had little or no water for the last 12 days. If South East Water cannot maintain supply to existing dwellings consistently, then how is it going to achieve it for new builds which are being suggested for open, sensitive countryside? The pre-development offer seems to mean very little. The proposal represents some justified development on the view of the Medway Valley, in which landscape mitigation by the applicant's own admission is uncertain, as is traffic, air quality and South East Water's delivery capabilities. Therefore, planning permission should be refused. Thank you.
Now, Peter, if you'd like to come forward, please. Yes, absolutely certain.
Chairman, can I propose the speaker as an extra minute to modify his distress? Thank you.
That's no.
I'm Chairman Teesson Parish Council, just to the east of this site. The officer's report doesn't reflect our Stage 2 Greenbelt assessment that noted contribution to ribbon development and increasing perception of sprawl along Tunbridge Road and adverse visual impact undermining the wider Greenbelt sense of openness. They excluded this area from further consideration. The applicant advocates sidestepping Greenbelt concerns by claiming Greybelt status. Officer's assessment of that claim generally hides behind Waterbury not meeting the assumed high bar for designation as a town. But Waterbury is a large built-up area with some 1,000 houses and is classified as built-up area by the ONS in the December 22 report. Nor do officers credit this site's contribution to preserving the character and setting of Waterbury, particularly when viewed from the south. Neutral assessment should have negated any grounds for Greybelt status. On 23rd of June this year, a letter was submitted by Richard Buxton's solicitors. It is a well-regarded professional practice within disciplines pertinent to this application. It makes clear this committee may give greater weight to landscape harm than officers. The Medway immediately to the south is part of a Maidstone area of local landscape value. Officers dismiss that as irrelevant,
but that solicitor's letter makes clear MBC's landscape assessment is relevant, being technical input independent of planning policy considerations. The solicitor letter concludes this committee should, quote, be confident that landscape forms a sensible and strong ground for refusal, end quote. If you are minded to refuse this application, officers will intervene, citing risk of cost award if this goes to appeal. However, from 2021 to March this year, there were 11 cases of cost awards against your borough at appeal, totaling 82k, and that is within the context of thousands of applications. Besides awarded costs, internal spending on appeals was some 50k per annum. To that must be added the 300k cost for land at Eccles. But you have been reassured by officers that their procedural deficiency is now healed over. Therefore, only some 3% of appeal-related costs were for cases when Planning Committee went against officers' recommendation. History makes clear that Planning Committee members have a good track record at appeal when going against officer advice, incurring only a trivial percentage of total appeal-related costs. We ask you please to declare this site as not grey belt and then include in your refusal the adverse and irreversible landscape impact. That is, please recommend refusal and then stand firm when officers pressure you with assessed costs when the public is excluded from this meeting later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Northern, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I appreciate that we need new housing and I'm not opposed to development in principle. However, I firmly believe that the loss of this landscape would far outweigh the benefit of 66 houses. This is not simply an empty field, it forms part of the distinctive Medway Valley landscape and that defines Waterbury's character and identity. The open views across the valley are enjoyed by residents and visitors alike. They are one of the village's greatest assets and contribute significantly to its sense of place. Importantly, two independent landscape experts commissioned by Protecto Medway Valley and a further one by Andrew Hunter, that's just been referred to, have concluded that the development would result in significant landscape harm, along with the applicant's own findings. Their professional assessments support what residents have been saying from the outset: this site is not suitable for development. If approved, these houses will not gently nestle into the valley landscape, they would dominate it. They would not enhance the character of Waterbury, they would fundamentally change it. Once this landscape is lost, it is gone forever, the harm cannot be reversed. I also wish to highlight the strength of local feeling. We carried out a survey of local residents regarding the development in Waterbury Village Fair. One was for and 206 were against this development. I therefore respectfully urge members to stand by the original decision and refuse this application. By doing so, you will be protecting an important landscape, preserving Waterbury's unique identity and reflecting the clearly expressed wishes of the local community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. David Mitchell-Moore, please.
The landscape harm lies at the heart of my opposition to the planning development proposed north of Drayhorse Meadow in Waterbury. The landscape of local value that Maidstone Borough Council have in place accurately assesses the value and amenity the adjacent section of the Medway Valley offers to residents, walkers and casual users on a daily basis. The landscape character assessment concludes that the valley must, wherever possible, be conserved, given its quality and the sensitivity of its natural forms. Should this application be successful, it will blight the use and appreciation of the surrounding area irreparably. The landscape and visual impact assessment submitted by Crowdace dismisses the magnitude of visual change should the application be successful as negligible. On the contrary, many key viewpoints are highly susceptible to change given their clear visibility from the site of the proposed development, as illustrated in the A3 pack received by Planning Committee members. Success of this application would rob residents and visitors alike of a sustained, unimpeded view of the Medway Valley that very few other sections of the river provide. I would even contend that the splendour of the valley should be considered for UNESCO World Heritage status, as the site offers cultural and natural heritage of outstanding value to humanity. Please oppose. Yes. Committee members, in February, you were minded to refuse the application. You were right then, and the body of evidence now supports the same conclusion. I have taken legal advice from a leading planning solicitor, Buxton Solicitor, whose advice the committee has seen. This case turns on one issue and one issue alone, landscape harm. And the position is clear. The applicant's own assessment identifies moderate to major adverse effects. Independent expert review confirms these findings, concludes that development would damage the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. That is not a marginal impact. It is a significant harm which conflicts with your own policy. And it further conflicts with the following. Firstly, the NPPF, which requires protection of landscape character. Secondly, policy CP 24.1, requiring development to respect its surroundings. And thirdly, policy SQ1, protecting local distinctiveness and tranquility. Your own landscape evidence indicates that at most, this site might accommodate small-scale development, but certainly not 66. This proposal goes well beyond that, resulting in substantial change and significant harm. Critically, you are not restrained here. The addendum office report is clear that refusal on landscape grounds would not expose the council to an unreasonable risk of cost if the developer decided to appeal. You are fully entitled to give greater weight to landscape harm than officers have done. This is your planning judgment. Conversely, if you approve it, you would be accepting clear harm that goes against your own policies, making it harder to defend this decision and similar decisions where developers inevitably make further speculative applications. Members, this site does not sit in isolation. The harm extends across the Medway Valley. So the position is straightforward. The harm is real, evidenced and significant to the village of Watering. It is contrary to policy, also fails to respect the character of Wateringbury and its status as a standalone, distinctive village. You recognise these issues before, you can act on them with confidence today. I therefore urge you to refuse this application.
Thank you. And finally, please, Holly Peckett.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Holly Beckett. I'm a land manager at Crowdace Homes. We're a part owner of the site and the company that will deliver the development should planning permission be granted. Crowdace Homes is a medium-sized family-owned house builder established in 1946 to support the post-war rebuilding of homes across the country. We are committed to delivering high-quality, sustainable developments, as demonstrated by our work at Hermitage Park in Maidstone. We have also maintained a 5-star customer satisfaction rating from the Homes Building Federation for 14 consecutive years, with over 90% of customers stating that they would recommend a Crowdace house. The proposed development comprises 66 homes on an edge of settlement location, with 50% of it provided as affordable housings. Committee earlier said how important it is to deliver affordable housing, and 33 dwellings of the 66 will be delivered as affordable housing. Over half the site will be retained as open space. This is secured in perpetuity through appropriate management arrangements. So that means the other half of the site will not be developed upon. The application has been subject to detailed technical assessment and no objections have been raised by the statutory consultees. In addition, the scheme includes a significant financial contribution towards improvements to the Watering Green Crossroads junction. This reflects local concerns regarding traffic and providing mitigation proportionate to the scale of the development. Having regard to the extensive advice received from both the planning and the legal team at Tunbridge and Morling, we firmly believe that the planning benefits outweigh the alleged landscape harm, and we will continue to promote the scheme for development. We respectfully ask members to consider the substantial benefits of the proposal, and including the delivery of much needed market and affordable housing, extensive open space and infrastructure improvements when reaching their decision this evening. Thank you.
Right, members, we've got, does anybody wish to speak or speak on the part 2 aspects? Do you wish to go to part 2 now or not?
I will intend to keep my comments onto part 1 if you'll allow me to speak, because I'm not a member of your committee, but I'm happy to be interrupted if you feel I'm veering into part 2.
That you are.
Sorry, that was half an answer, wasn't it?
In which case, could I ask you as the local member to carry on?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to keep this brief. I'm conscious of time. I'm also conscious, though, that members of the public, a considerable number, have sat for many hours in this chamber waiting for this application to be determined in searing heat a few weeks ago and again tonight. There were 3 reasons that are on the screen in front of us as to why this application was refused. I'm just going to limit my comments to those 3 reasons and 1 additional issue in relation to water. The first, I'll start with number 2. I want to finish with landscape, which is around air quality. In the benefit of keeping my remarks short, I emailed all members of the committee yesterday with evidence that Waterbury Parish Council has put on air quality that was discussed at the last meeting too. I also, just picking up on something that the applicant said at that point about the crossroads. I know Sarah will probably mention this because I can see the letter in front of her, but you can't divorce the crossroads and the air quality issue. So, so we definitely need to investigate that a little bit further. Now, Mr. Coolin from Teeston Parish Council referenced the ARUP report that was prepared for the local plan. This was not an allocated site as a draft allocation, I should say, at Regulation 18 for the reasons that were said. And therefore, I think it's really important that we do consider carefully that particular report and whether this actually does meet the tests or not. The additional issue I want to mention is water. Now, it's referred to in the supplementary paper that South East Water have issued a letter to the applicant dated the 1st of July. My thanks to Sue as the case officer for sending that when I inquired if we could see that letter. That letter does not say anywhere that water can be supplied to this development. What it does is provide a quote to Crowday, so if we've heard we'll be developing the scheme, telling them how much it will cost in order to connect the physical infrastructure to the existing water infrastructure. Now, you can build all the pipes, you can put all the pipes in the right place, you can put them to the houses, but there's no guarantee that the water will actually be there to run through the pipes. So what we have got is a quote to connect infrastructure. It is not a guarantee of water supply. And finally, I had the pleasure, actually, because he was a jolly nice chap, of speaking to a senior representative of Crowdace a few weeks ago who said, in his precise words to me, well, you don't like our Waterbury application, do you? And I said, no, I don't. I don't think it's a very good application. not because of Crowdace's reputation as a builder. I mean, they're clearly very proud of it, as the applicant said, but I said the problem here is quite simply the site and specifically the landscape harm. Now, what we have seen in our Part 2 report is very clear. There is a very defendable ground on landscape reasons. I mean, I'm not speaking out of turn because I have said this to the officers separately. I was very surprised with the recommendation to approve this at the first committee. Very, very surprised, because I thought this should have been refused on landscape grounds, and I still do. Now, the letter from Richard Buxton solicitors that has come since the last committee meeting is very important in this regard, and it does make clear at the very end that that Pete Lever, and some of you will be asking, who is Pete Lever? He's from he's been commissioned by Richard Buxton Architects, will be prepared to defend the grounds of refusal, and that's available for members to see. But I also think that, and I've been doing a little bit of work on this in the last 5 months, that we can beef that ground up, that first ground, and so therefore my recommendation to the committee, and obviously I'm not a voting member of the committee, so I'm able to do this, is that we should amend the first reason for refusal to state that in addition to what's up there, the proposal would result in a harmful and irreversible loss of the countryside setting and open landscape character of this part of the Medway Valley, which is detrimental to the character and appearance of the area, in conflict with core strategy policy CP24, managing development and the Environment Development Plan Policy SQ1, and MPPF paragraphs 187 and 135. The adverse impacts of this development of this landscape harm would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme, disengaging the tilted balance under paragraphs 11D II. I've deliberately kept my comments short. We could, and we did discuss this at great length at the Area 2 Planning Committee, but I would implore the committee, this is not a very good site at all for development. You've certainly got an exceedingly strong reason in landscape grounds to refuse. You've got 3 other potential reasons too, and I look forward to hearing the debate. Thank you very much.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. As the other local member, I thought I'd also add a few points in. Going back to the Arup report originally, the last few sentences basically says that it is located within the Greenbelt. However, the Stage 2 Greenbelt assessment considers that the site performs strongly against the MPPF purposes and makes an important contribution to the wider Greenbelt. The site is also Grade 1 agricultural land, best and most versatile. The development of the site would result in an increase in traffic in the nearby AQMA due to the high sensitivity of the site to the purposes of the Greenbelt and its designation as Grade 1 agricultural land, and also the likely worsening of air quality in the nearby AQMA. It is considered that the site would be unsuitable for development. Yet here we are. Right, back in 2019 at the JTB on the 14th of November, a proposal was put forward by Kent Highways to create a three-lane superhighway through the crossroads. The traffic modelling for the scheme showed that there would be a 50% increase in capacity if they did this. However, at peak times, the junction would still be minus 20% capacity in the morning and minus 14% capacity in the evening. Now, we didn't go for that scheme because, funnily enough, we didn't fancy a 3-lane superhighway through a village that featured in the Doomsday Book. So consequently, the capacity at that crossroads is already significantly higher than 20% over capacity in the morning and significantly higher than 14% over capacity in the evenings. So any scheme of any description, regardless of the quantity, will impact the quantity of vehicles travelling through that crossroads and therefore will impact on the air quality. Now, I appreciate the air quality assessments are subjective. I'm sure if we got a third independent contractor in, he could then determine whether he believed the Waterbury Parish Council assessment or whether he agreed with the TNBC assessment. This is the problem with some of these scientific things. They are subjective, and it's down to each particular scientist's viewpoint as to whether it does or doesn't have any significant impact. I mean, the mitigation for the air quality in the application is a contribution to a MOVA system, of £20,000. Now, MOVA stands for Microprocessor Optimized Vehicle Actuation Control Strategy. Basically, it's a load of loops in the ground which assess the weight of vehicles, etc. One of the things that came out, and this to say was in 2019, was that the cost of that system would be around £200,000. Obviously, 7 years later, it's nowhere going to be 200. We're talking probably 300 grand plus. So 20 grand is a drop in the ocean, and it isn't going to happen. So it doesn't matter that they were going to make a generous donation of 20 grand to a MOVA system. It isn't going to be replacing our existing crossroads. Due to the way that the MOVA system works, they cannot model what the traffic would be like with that system, in part to do with the fact that the sensors that have to be positioned in the roadway, especially in Bow Road, which is on a steep incline upwards, they would not be able to determine if there's any improvement, as stated in the KCC report from 2019. They would also, in addition, have to install puffin crossings, as opposed to the existing pelican crossing. And they would be on detectors, which would also extend the maximum time to cross the road for pedestrians. So consequently, this system would not actually improve air quality, it would actually worsen it, because vehicles would be at a standstill for a longer period of time. Going forward to the final thing that I wanted to say, which obviously is on landscape grounds. As a resident of Waterbury for the last 27 years, this area of the village is something that I have been trying to protect in my entire residency of the village. And I would urge all members of this committee to support me in refusing this application. This is not of benefit to the residents of Waterbury, 33 affordable homes or not. Yes, we do need more homes, but this is not the right location for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to touch on air quality. Coming from Borough Green, we have a long history of traffic pollution, which is why they imposed an AQMA. That AQMA, along with many others in the borough, have now gone because vehicle technology has improved, pollution is less, but not in Wateringbury. Now, the officers quote here that according to current air quality data, the AQMA has not worsened and is within the acceptable range. The AQMA is already outside the acceptable range. That's why an AQMA has been imposed, because of high pollution, and development is supposed to be limited in an area with an AQMA. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think we'll go over to Christian and ask you to explain the AQMA to us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so just for context, I manage the environmental protection team that monitors air quality borough. The AQMA at Wateringbury is our last remaining air quality management area. So that's been in place now for just over 20 years. It was declared for exceedances of the nitrogen dioxide objective. Now, over the last few years, as been mentioned, technology has improved, the introduction of electric vehicles, etc. So we have seen a reduction in the pollution from levels of nitrogen dioxide at Wateringbury, and I do have a slide which that is the measured example of nitrogen dioxide levels at the Wateringbury junction over the last 5 years. Just to add some context to that, the traffic data that I have from the government website suggests an increase in traffic of approximately 13% over the same period. So you can just see the primary reason there will be Euro 6, I think we're up to Euro 6D, with Euro 7 coming in later this year. But primarily it will be electric vehicles, hybrids, and the introduction of stop-start technology in that type of traffic. So the blue line is the worst, obviously, of all of those. And you can see the black line there is the objective, 40 micrograms annual objective. The red dotted line underneath is 36 micrograms. That is a DEFRA standard that we can't consider revoking the AQMA until the levels fall below that line, because it's measured by what they call passive diffusion. So that's where we're at. That blue line obviously is just meeting that 36 microgram threshold in the last calendar year for which we have results. So that's a very quick overview of what the current situation is at the junction. As Councillor Taylor has mentioned, obviously we need to be mindful of developments in the area and what impact they will have. The issue, of course, with Wateringbury is it's not just development very close to the acre. Essentially, any development within Tunbridge Wells, Maidstone, or Tunbridge, because by nature of that junction, it will carry traffic from any of those towns between each other. So, as I mentioned, those results there are in the context of a 13% increase on the eastern arm of that junction.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Dennis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll only really speak about the third reason. And I must admit, hearing what Councillor Hudson said about Arup's comments, I'm going to say something I never expected to say, that I agree with Arup. Because you were quite right in pointing out that the current local plan is the 2007 local plan. Yes, in considering this application, we're supposed to give weight to any other considerations, and Arup is consultant who has provided evidence as part of the emerging local plan. I personally have got on record of disagreeing with most of what they said. I just think they've taken a great grey brush to almost every piece of green belt in the borough. But in this particular case, if that is an accurate statement, I think it's actually, it bears plain logic that it is obvious to anyone that that site does make a significant contribution to the openness of the green belt. So it does satisfy at least one element of 11D of the MPPF. So I'm not quite sure why there is any attempt to call it grey belt. It definitely shouldn't have been under existing local plan, and obviously Arup agrees in this particular case, so I'm a bit confused with why we're even considering it in that, and it obviously is maintaining the openness of a really magnificent piece of landscape. Thank you.
Yes, Cecily, please.
Just to come back on that, right, so paragraph 6.22 is the report you're referring to, and yes, they do say that it strongly contributes and it plays an important role, and that is under criteria C. And when you assess grey belt, you are not allowed to consider C. The only three elements that you consider are A, B, and D. So when we assess, so under, you could have something under green belt that is inappropriate, but then when you assess it under grey belt, it becomes appropriate because it's there's a slightly different test. So under grey belt, we're testing it for the check of unrestricted sprawl of a large built up area. And for the purposes of how you assess that, Wateringbury is not a large built up area, and that's clear in planning policy guidance. It sets that out. It shows you what you consider a large built up area. Then you would consider B, which is to prevent neighbouring tiles merging into one another. And that, even on this, score 0. So both of those are 0. And then the next one we can consider for grey belt is to preserve the setting and special character of historic towns. Well, obviously Wateringbury isn't. So under the grey belt assessment, they're all 0s. Therefore and then you do the next test within that. And that's how we've come to the conclusion it's grey belt.
Sorry, Susan, remind me what A is again?
A is to check the unrestricted sprawl of a large built-up area.
Okay. I would have said it was doing that, but obviously Arup disagrees, and so I'm happy to go back to disagreeing with Arup. Thank you.
Right then, I think we're at the point. Oh, sneaking up on me. Michelle first, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to raise another aspect on the grey belt, green belt, because there's another section in the stage 2 report that says that the narrowness of the strip that would remain to the east of the development may compromise the integrity and performance of the wider green belt. Is that another aspect? I mean, would that section to the east would become sort of functionally meaningless? Is that something that we can take into account? So I'd just like an answer on that. And I did want to just comment briefly on the other 2 aspects. Firstly, the air quality. We have got the parish council's alternative evidence, and that does raise questions and doubts. And this is the most problematic arm. And what we would be doing is inviting traffic onto it at a point where they're coming from a cold start, so they're producing the most pollution that they would be on their journey. They're not coming from 5 miles down the road. They're immediately joining the worst arm of the crossroads, and that should give us all alarm bells. You know, I just wonder if there just can't be a worse place for traffic in Wateringbury. And Councillor Hudson highlighted the contribution towards the MOVA, which is only a fraction of the cost. So, you know, I wonder if that would ever appear. Will it actually work? And if MOVA is the answer, why on earth haven't Kent Highways installed it already so that it could be assessed for its effectiveness before any, you know, consideration is given to adding more houses? On the landscape, we've clearly got an arguable case, and you know, again, we've got evidence from the parish council, and we're entitled to come to a different view. And I would support the if someone puts forward the recommendation, you know, on Councillor Bolton's revised grounds. I think that's a sensible way forward on that point. I just wanted to clarify or query the LLV, because the landscape effects clearly don't stop at the borough boundary. They are projected across to the other side, and we talked long and hard about the quality of the landscape last time. And it's a matter of fact that Maidstone have that designation. So whether or not we refer to it in the ground of refusal, can I have confirmation that is something that can be considered as part of the evidence at appeal? Because it is highly relevant, but I am trying to take account of the advice that's been given about whether it should be part of the ground of refusal. Thank you.
I think Michelle raises a couple of good points. Crispin, could you deal with the air quality side of that first, please?
In terms of the emissions from an engine at startup, the difficulty is, as I mentioned, because we're moving towards hybrid technology and electric vehicles, it would be very difficult to measure exactly how much, just because it's a fresh vehicle on the road, if you like, as opposed to a vehicle that's been in transit for several miles. The idea of hybrids and stop-start technology is, if it's in stationary traffic, it would switch the engine off, or you're running on the electric, which wouldn't have the same pollution. Certainly nitrogen dioxide, for which the QMA was declared.
Understood. Is the amount of hybrids and electric vehicles so significant now that the air quality management is definitely going down?
As presented on the slide, that is the way that it's travelling, definitely, and that's the reason why late last year we were able to revoke 4 of the others.
Michelle, I'd prefer to get the answer to your second part of the question first. Please.
Well, the first part of your question, can you just tell me, can you say that to me again, and can you tell me where that's located, please, before I answer it? Stage 2.
It was in the stage 2 Greenbelt study. And it says, in effect, the narrowness of the strip that would remain to the east of the development may compromise the integrity and performance of the wider Greenbelt.
So is this the one that's discounted the site? Is it that stage or our Greenbelt study?
Okay. Yeah.
I'd have to have a look. Sorry, I haven't got that to hand, so I'll have to have a look.
Yes, please.
Just a couple of questions, not on the landscape. Very briefly touching on the water point. Can I confirm, are we relying on this letter to satisfy us, or is the condition that we're applying going to require further things from the water company before they do that? And on the air quality assessment, looking at the report provided by the parish council, it doesn't seem to provide much in the way of strong evidence that it would cause harm. What it does is call into question a lot of the assumptions and